1 year ago, the Zelda franchise released a historic game that redefined the phrase, The Legend of Zelda. For the first time, the namesake princess was playable, in a title that broke gameplay conventions while aligning with the creative, problem-solving heart of the series. The game received praise for its return to dungeon-based puzzles, its contribution to the lore, and its fresh take on exploring Hyrule. For me, the game fulfilled a wish I'd had ever since I was a kid, getting to play as Princess Zelda herself. And while I wish her debut game had been bigger, I was absolutely charmed by the adorable character design and the freedom to experiment as you play. No two playthroughs look exactly alike, and I love the chaos you can unleash with the echoes. The game was an instant classic in my book, but it's often been described as underrated or underappreciated. So, now that a year has passed, I wanted to show some love to Echoes by assembling a panel to reflect on the game on its anniversary, and discuss its contributions to the franchise and what it might mean for the future of Zelda. I was excited to take this as another opportunity to put a spotlight on some of my fellow ladies of ZeldaTube and the work that they do. So today, I'm joined by 3 awesome channels, Stranded on Eventide, Zeldian Gamer, and Super Zelda Girl. These 3 all make great content and have different perspectives on the Zelda series, so if you don't already follow them, I would definitely check them out. So now, let's jump on into this retrospective of Echoes of Wisdom. I'll let each of our panelists introduce themselves and get right into the first question, which is, take me back to when Echoes of Wisdom was first announced. What were your initial thoughts or reactions? And overall, did you think the game lived up to your expectations, or did it subvert them in any way?
Hey Hylians, I'm Super Zelda Girl. I make content on basically anything I can to do with the Legend of Zelda series, from Let's Plays and theories to videos on merchandise and cosplay. When Echoes of Wisdom was first announced, I was extremely excited. When watching the first trailer and seeing Link free Zelda from Miss Crystal, I instantly knew that she was going to be playable, and it really was such a wave of emotions seeing that happen. Then seeing that the game was going to be in a classic top-down style, I was completely sold. It had been a very long time at that point since we last had a top-down traditional Zelda game. The echo mechanic was instantly super interesting. To me, it reminded me a lot of the wacky mechanics found in games like A Link Between Worlds and Minish Cap. It was a nice change to have something like this after Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom were more grounded in a way. When they showed off all of the items and creatures and enemies that we could echo, I just knew this game would have a huge focus on puzzles, and that was perfect in my eyes for a game focusing around Zelda, and I definitely was not disappointed in having a game focused more on puzzles than combat.
Hello everyone, I'm Zeldian Gamer, but more often than not, I just go by Zeldian. On my channel, I like to post anything related to the Legend of Zelda franchise. I'm a huge Zelda fan, and I love diving into the lore of the games, coming up with crazy theories, and of course playing the games. I hope to see you there! When Nintendo went live on a random Tuesday, showing off new games coming to the Switch, I actually didn't even watch the Direct. I had no faith that Nintendo would actually show any new Zelda games. It wasn't until my dad and brother suggested that I watch the Direct that I curiously checked it out. As soon as I saw the Echoes of Wisdom trailer, I knew that I had to play this game. I loved that they returned to using the same art style as the Link's Awakening remake. It makes everything look like little toys, and it's all so adorable. In my opinion, this is the perfect look for a 2D Zelda game. Also, having been fairly new to being a fan of the series, this game was actually the first time I got to see a Zelda game get announced. When Tears of the Kingdom was being announced and released, I hadn't even played Breath of the Wild, so I had no interest in it, and I really had no idea that there even was a new Zelda game coming out. At the time, I was still playing through Wind Waker, Link's Awakening, and Skyward Sword. So after finally playing more Zelda games and soaking up all the lore and information I could about the franchise, Echoes of Wisdom was the first time I joined the process of watching and waiting for the new game to come out. And yes, this game was really fun, and I absolutely enjoyed getting to play as Zelda. I was a bit skeptical at first of the echoes and how they would turn out to work, but in the end, everything played out pretty well. Except for maybe the endless side-scrolling UI, which got quite annoying. Even so, I found myself getting used to that time-consuming feature. So although this game may not have won Game of the Year, I still found myself smiling at so many different cutscenes, moments, and characters, and having lots of fun saving this rift-infested Hyrule.
Hello, hello! It's nice to see you. I'm stranded on Eventide. Literally. I've never beaten Eventide, but you can call me Marley. I'm a composer who focuses on game tracks, specifically storytelling and music. So over on Eventide, I enjoy analyzing and discussing all musical aspects of Zelda games, but especially when it comes to overall character and world building. What does this music have to say? Are there any hidden details? That sort of thing. Especially when it comes to instrumentation. That's kind of my favorite thing to talk about. Unfortunately, I am very biased towards music when it comes to gaming. I will admit, I'm a wanderer. I like walking around, finding different things, smashing all the pots. I'm easily distracted by the music too, so that doesn't help. That and I'm just really bad at combat. Like, really bad at combat. So, when I heard about Echoes of Wisdom, it seemed like there was less focus on direct combat, and it felt more like an all-around puzzle, which was promising for someone like me, where you can rely on a good combination of echoes rather than your non-existent combat skills. I would say it went above and beyond my expectations. Okay, the instrumentation. The woodwinds give the atmosphere a gentle bubbliness that the still world just destroys, and I love it. And just now realizing that sounds very chaotic. I really liked the way the game turned out. It's up there as one of my favorites, not solely because of the music, although I am very biased. And some of those echoes just make really fun sounds. Okay, I am very biased, I'm sorry. The trampoline was my favorite.
I'll also chime in to say, as I sort of set up at the beginning, as a lifelong proponent of playable Zelda, my expectations were sky high for this game. I would say I definitely came away from the game wanting more, but in a good way. Because while the scope of the game was smaller than what I wanted, the execution was immaculate. I had such a fun time playing, and so overall, I would say it met expectations in unexpected ways. It definitely feels like it was underrated and maybe didn't get the attention it deserved, but more on that later. For now, I'd like to dive into some questions about gameplay. First, by discussing the dungeons, since their inclusion was one of the true highlights of the game. So, thinking back, what was your favorite dungeon and why?
The dungeons of Echoes of Wisdom were all very cool in how they work with the echo mechanics, but for me the most memorable ones were probably the mini side dungeons. These dungeons were much smaller than the main dungeons in the story, and they mainly focused on one key mechanic. The way they were just a part of the overworld and you could find them at really any time reminded me a lot of the original Zelda game, and that's something that I've actually been wanting to see brought back to the series for a very long time. Dungeons that you could just stumble upon. The bosses of the dungeons were also very cool, as even though the dungeons may have not been a part of the game's main story, they didn't cheap out on the bosses, making them fun and engaging and also making them have callbacks to other games in the series. It was definitely a surprise seeing a character like Smog brought back.
My favorite dungeon was the Faron Temple. The environment of this dungeon was really cool. I loved the electrical themed puzzles and the layout of this dungeon. There were so many rooms available from the start, and I liked choosing which ones to try out first. Some parts of the temple were even temporarily in the dark, and it was fun trying to navigate without being able to see well. The place also felt very diverse and much grander than the previous dungeons. The map was huge and even made you need to go outside sometimes in order to access other parts of the temple. The difficulty level, in my opinion, was also a bit higher than the previous dungeons, which I enjoyed. And the final boss fight with the Spider Goma was a lot of fun as well. I really enjoyed using my electrical echoes to try and activate the crystals on Goma's legs, even though the giant spider kept crawling all over the place. And halfway through the fight, she decides to blast me with a huge laser beam straight from her ugly eye, which startled me a bit.
I haven't actually finished the game yet, I know. I'm a notoriously slow gamer. maybe you can tie that to my poor combat skills. Maybe you can tie that to many hobbies. I don't know, but I'm very slow, and I'd say I'm about halfway through Echoes of Wisdom. I know, and it's already been a year. So I don't know that I can answer exactly what my favorite dungeon is, but of the ones I've done so far, I really enjoyed the Gerudo dungeon. It stumped me up a little bit more. I'm not sure I can pinpoint why, but I had to loop back around at least like 5 times. Yeah, we'll go with the Gerudo dungeon.
And for me, the Gerudo and Pharaon temples were also up there for their incredible atmosphere, but at the end of the day, I have to say the one that stuck with me the most was Lanayru. I think that dungeon provided the most light bulb moments for me that I still remember. Like the room where you have to activate 2 buttons at once, or the side-scrolling section where you have to light all the torches. I remember those in particular for the satisfying ways that you could solve it. I also just thought, thematically, the mixing of the elemental components of fire and ice was a really cool idea. My next question is, how did the mechanics of Zelda's abilities shape your experience differently than if we'd had Link-centered gameplay?
I really love how they kept Zelda's abilities as a magical effect rather than like facing head-on with a sword and a shield. Which is fun, but in its own aspects. I think it fits Zelda specifically because, as you know, the Triforce wielder of wisdom, she seems more likely to use thought, perception, the resources around her, rather than to just attack. And personally, I felt more comfortable with Zelda, probably again because I suck at combat. And I'm thinking back to games like Breath of the Wild where I was already attempting to use like rocks from the top of a hill to solve my problems versus just facing them head on. But yeah, I think the change in Zelda's abilities really shifts the focus from Link's view of Hyrule to Zelda's view of Hyrule, if that makes any sense. Plus, I liked the idea that she was learning echoes, as that seems to be a reoccurring personality trait of Zelda.
I really enjoyed how this game had me completely change my mindset and go from a swordsman, up close and intimate with every battle, to a less direct approach, focusing more on strategy. I love how it forced me to think outside of the box and come up with new ways to overcome challenges. Even after I gained a sword and other weapons, I found myself too afraid to run out of might crystal energy, and I always sided with just coming up with fun echo combos to triumph over puzzles or enemies. Because it was so different from other Zelda games using echoes instead of a sword, it really did make me feel like I wasn't Link this time. And I think it was a great way to separate the mechanics and gameplay style in this game since you play as a whole other character.
As much as I do like the echo mechanic though, there were times that I feel with just how many echoes we had access to, there were times that we could simply cheese many of the puzzles. Which is honestly something that I feel has been happening with a lot of the latest Zelda games. It's not all bad though, as while this definitely happened for me at least a couple of times, I feel I did do most of the puzzles how they were intended. And it may be fun to try these more cheesy ways on other playthroughs. The thing I felt is that most of the time I was overthinking the puzzles and how I could use my echoes, and I did many things in ways that probably I shouldn't have done because of how complicated and probably stupid they were.
I can definitely relate to the overcomplicated solutions to simple problems. For me, that was definitely part of the fun. So, jumping off that topic into our next question, were there aspects of the gameplay you'd like to see carried into future Zelda titles?
I would like to see echoes return, just on a much smaller scale. I don't want it to be the main way of dealing with puzzles or enemies though. I would just like to occasionally have the option to think of ways to use echoes alongside melee combat. Just like in Breath of the Wild, where there are other ways to tackle an enemy camp other than just going head-on and attacking the monsters. You had the option to roll a giant boulder down on top of some bokoblins, instead of dealing with them directly, which was really funny. So if we took this idea and applied it to some echoes, there could definitely be a wide range of solutions to one problem, while also giving the player the option to choose the typical route.
The UI. Next question. Kidding. Not so much gameplay, but I would love if they would keep using those little footstep sounds. They're so cute. I do like the idea that if they were to keep Zelda as playable character in future games, that they would keep her as sort of this, more of a magic wielder.
I would echo Zeldian's comment about the strength of Echoes in Breath of the Wild being multiple approaches to fighting enemies or solving puzzles. I think the Echoes themselves will probably remain tied to this game because they're pretty unique, but I think the concept in general could carry on to other games. I also felt Echoes did a great job balancing open-world gameplay with the traditional structure that many Zelda fans want. I love getting to explore the world freely, but it was nice that certain areas were inaccessible or at least really hard to reach from the start. That did not stop me from trying to scale Lanayru way before I was supposed to, though. But generally, I liked that while you had a selection of dungeons to choose from, others were locked until you progressed through the story. So, while the debate between Wilds era fans and traditional game advocates continues to rage on, I think Echoes quietly did an incredible job melding those ideas. Also, and this isn't necessarily specific to Echoes, but it was just really nice to have a companion character again. I thought Tri was a wonderful, emotionally compelling addition to the story, and felt very much like a successor to Fi. I think companions are an important component to Zelda games that we sometimes forget about, so I hope we'll see more of them in the future. Now, onto a different category. Since we've got this great group of women here, I want to touch on the topic of representation. Obviously, Zelda being the main character was a first for the series. So I'd love to know, from your perspective, how did you feel about getting to play as Zelda as the main character in a game for the first time?
I've been playing the Zelda series since I was a child, and I remember many times as a kid wanting to have a game where I could play as Zelda. And even now as an adult, I was hoping for it to maybe happen. So now that it has happened, it still feels almost unreal. Having Zelda as the main playable character, I feel gives us a different look on the world and the story of the game. Unlike Link in most games, Zelda already has an important standing in Hyrule, and almost everyone knows her. She's aware of more of how the kingdom works, and so when things go wrong, it really is interesting to see how they directly affect her. Using the Echo of the King of Hyrule to get Zelda out and away from the castle, basically starting her quest, was a great way to get the ball rolling in my eyes, as it felt natural and made sense for why she had to leave and be in disguise.
Even when she's not playable, I feel like she's not often overlooked. In many games, she's still very important to the story, so I don't know that in the past I minded so much solely playing as Link, but I did enjoy the fact that as Zelda we got the new combat style, and I love how that felt like it made the game more puzzle focused. Again, because I think you're seeing this Hyrule from Zelda's eyes rather than from Link's eyes. I feel like she would put a lot more thought into things. No offense, Link.
It was really awesome. I loved that Zelda was finally able to shine in her own series more. It showed that Zelda really is capable of being the legend in her own franchise. It was really cool how instead of being an unknown swordsman, the NPCs treated us as royalty. We got to see Hyrule through Zelda's eyes, and in this game, her kingdom became our kingdom. We weren't just saving Hyrule, we were saving our people. I really enjoyed playing from that perspective. Everything became more personal, whereas with Link, he might just be trying to save Zelda and along the way saves Hyrule. So, while I loved finally getting to play as Zelda and would love to see another game with her as the main playable character, I actually wouldn't want this to become a trend. I love playing as Link and being the hero chosen by the goddess. I really enjoy playing as the silent and goofy knight. However, I did enjoy this experience, and it was definitely something the series needed.
So, as you might expect, I have a lot of thoughts about this, but overall, like SCG, for me it was a lifelong dream realized and such a powerful moment in the game when the controls turn over to Zelda and you break out of that crystal. I agreed with everyone who said that exploring the world as Zelda added a new and interesting dynamic, which was something I love. As Hylian royalty, you could play diplomat with other rulers, and doing quests added higher stakes, as it felt like you were helping your people rather than a random person you encounter. And as the representative of wisdom, you're given the opportunity to solve puzzles in more interesting ways. Although I'm not sure exactly how wise some of my puzzle attempts looked. My next question is, if Zelda remains playable in the future, how would you want her abilities, story, or role to evolve?
Like I said earlier, I would absolutely love to see another game where Zelda is the main protagonist. But I wouldn't want her to be subjected to only using echoes again. While they were fun, I think there are other ways Zelda can engage in combat. I don't think we should shy away from giving Zelda weapons. I didn't really like that in this game, the only way for her to use a sword or bow was through the sword's possessive powers. It wasn't truly Zelda wielding those weapons. I believe Zelda could be fully capable of using a sword and bow. So sure, don't give her the Master Sword, but instead give her the Bow of Light, or some ninja weapons to reflect on her past as Sheik. Or, I'd like to see her use her time and light powers in combat. All of that said, there should be a way to make it feel like a Zelda game, give Zelda her powers and weapons, and still have it feel like we're playing as Zelda and not Link.
I definitely want to see Zelda playable in more mainline games, as I feel it could work so well for more stories in the series, and there is so many things that they could do with her. The echoes are a great and interesting mechanic, but Zelda has been shown many times to be a capable sword fighter and wielder of a bow, and let's not forget that she uses very strong magic. We also can't forget Sheik. Although they have only appeared in one mainline Zelda game, they are extremely popular and very cool. Switching between both Zelda and Sheik could be such a cool gameplay mechanic for a standalone Zelda game. There is so many different things that they could do for both sides of the princess. Zelda focusing on more magic and puzzles, and Sheik focusing on more combat and stealth.
While Echoes was an awesome game, I'm still rooting for Zelda to lead a full flagship game on the scale of a Breath of the Wild, and there's plenty of material to pull from with her. Like the others mentioned, I think combining her magic and melee in the next game could broaden her skill set in a way that will hold up in a bigger game and still allow her to feel different from just Girl Link. I recently did a whole video about this topic, which included a bunch of really interesting ideas from the community, so I'll link that at the end if you want to check that out. But anyway, back to the questions. As we start to wrap up on the Echoes discussion, I would love to know, 1 year later, what are some of the standout moments from the game that have really stuck with you?
When it comes to my most memorable moment of this game, it has to be the story. Although I was super excited for this game when it was first announced, I wasn't really expecting much from the story. I thought it would be something smaller and more simple. So when we got the introduction of Null, I was very excited. An almost cosmic horror entity who adds so much to the lore of the series by simply existing. I was sold. And I really hope that we see more from this creature in future games. Having Zelda also talk directly to the goddesses for, I think, the first time ever was fantastic. Such a great memorable moment to have at the end of some of these dungeons. And if any character is going to talk directly to the goddesses, it might as well be Zelda. I would definitely like to see more of that, her connection with the goddesses, if she's playable in future games.
I have two main things that stuck with me. The first one is the final battle. I loved how Link was able to help us in the end. He didn't take over, but instead we fought side by side, and I really liked that idea. Link and Zelda coming together in the end and both fighting the big bad as a team. It was really empowering, and it made it feel like this battle would go down in history and become a story younger generations of Link and Zelda would aspire to. My second thing is Null and its story. I know I'm in the minority when I say this, but I believe the treatment that Null got wasn't fully deserved. I really felt sorry for Null, and like we were in the wrong if you look at Echoes of Wisdom through Null's perspective.
I can't think of one little thing. Just that, as a whole, the game went down as one of my favorites for several reasons, one of which was the soundtrack. Actually, I lied. There's one little kid in Hyrule Ranch, I believe. His haircut shocked me And I don't know, I remember him. I can't tell you his name, but that guy, that little kid.
For me, it was the stories that led up to each of the game's dungeons. I loved all of them for different reasons. Sweet little Conde trying to find his brother, the Gerudo heir stepping up to a leadership role, and of course the chaotic little Deku Scrubs. They all had a different flavor, but each truly made me smile. I also think the game just included so many aspects of other Zelda games, in a way that was fun for nostalgia reasons, but also interesting to dissect from a lore perspective. Like, we got to see both branches of the Zora species, the Gorons, the Deku Scrubs, the Gerudo, all at once. Not to mention the throwback enemies and dungeons that returned here. Honestly, putting this video together really makes me want to play the game again and just relive the experience. I could go on and on, but since we're approaching the end now, I'll move on to our last question, which is, what are you hoping for in the next mainline Zelda game?
I would like to see a Zelda game that combines elements of past games and present games into one perfect game. Take away immediate freedom and bring back an exploration that makes you need to get past barriers using skills or items you acquire. Dungeons also need to come back, and I mean traditional dungeons in the likeness of Stone Tower Temple, the Water Temple of Ocarina of Time, or the Sand Ship. And of course, bring back musical instruments and never get rid of the green hat and tunic.
I don't think I have any preferences. So far, I mean, Zelda has a pretty good track record. I think every idea is good for something, and so long as developers don't keep everything static, there will be something to look forward to in the next game, and then the next game, and so on and so forth. Right? Maybe not the best answer, but that's about where I stand.
Thank you again to my guest stars, Eventide, SCG, and Zeldian for joining and chatting about this underrated yet groundbreaking game. I've linked their channels in the description, so be sure to check them out and give them a follow. And now, here are some last thoughts from our panel.
I absolutely adored Echoes of Wisdom. It really met my expectations and then some. It's truly a fantastic game for both old and new Zelda fans. And I can really see so many little girls growing up with this game being excited to play as the princess. Just like what I wanted when I was a kid. And that just makes me happy to know. Thank you Kokiri Theory for inviting me to be a part of this video. It's been lovely talking about this game, and I honestly can't believe it's already been a year since it came out. If you are interested in seeing some more Echoes of Wisdom stuff from me, I did do a whole Let's Play of the game for my first time playing it over on my channel. Thank you again for having me, Kokiri. It's been great talking about this cute little game.
You know, I was just thinking about how crazy it is that Echoes of Wisdom is nearly a whole year old. How time flies. I haven't even finished it yet. Dang. But anyways, thank you so much, Kokiri, for inviting me to join. Can you tell I've never done this before? I really appreciate it. I'm honored. And if anybody's interested in musical story analysis or appreciation, wandering travelers are always welcome for a stay on Eventide. You know, the nearest stable is quite a distance away.
Thank you so much, Kokiri Theory, for having me be a part of this project. This was tons of fun, and I feel very honored to be invited to work with you. I'm so glad Echoes of Wisdom was released, and I'm super happy to know that there are those out there who love this game and would love to talk about it more. Anyways, I'm Zeldian, and you can find my channel called Zeldian Gamer. I'm a huge Zelda fan, and I enjoy making Zelda content so much. I'd love to see you there.
Finally, just wanted to say again, happy birthday Echoes. This game is special to me, so it was really nice to celebrate it and reflect with this great group. But, of course, I'd love to hear from all of you as well. If you have any special memories of the game, please share it in the comments so we can keep the birthday party going. Hope you enjoyed this video and getting to hear from our guests. These videos are a lot of fun for me to make, so I hope to do a third episode of this Zelda Gals series sometime soon. And, as always, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.